Good afternoon, everybody. Or I guess it could just still be morning for some people in the Pacific time zone. Thank you for coming today. This is Cracking the Case. Here we go. This is Cracking the Case, Unpacking the Draft Information Literacy Framework for Criminal Justice. My name is Margie Rupel, and I'm the Social Sciences Librarian at the University of Kentucky. We have several people involved today, and I will introduce some of them in just a little bit. Before I get started, I just want to point out, when we talk about the companion document, we're talking about a document that has an actual longer title. It's the draft companion document to the ACRL framework for information literacy for higher education, criminology, and criminal justice. And I know you've seen other companion documents for disciplines. So this is the one for criminology and criminal justice. We have some goals for today. We want to give you a little information on how this companion document came to be, your perception of the document so far, and I realize maybe not everybody has seen it, so I'll give you a little bit of time later to glance at it. And we just hope to find out what is great and usable about the document, what might be missing. And we hope that you can exchange some ideas about how you teach with this discipline and maybe integrating the companion document or the frames for information literacy. And we also want to get your ideas about how to gather additional feedback, because we're kind of like in the middle of this document. It's not completely finished. It's a draft. So those are our goals for today. So we'll start out with a little bit about how the companion document came to be. And we're going to kind of do that in interview style. There's going to be a little bit of a pause, and then we'll do a large group discussion and a little bit of a wrap up. This link here is for today's session. I'm going to go to it briefly, just kind of show you what it looks like. And let's put it in chat. I will copy and put that in chat. There we go. Okay, so I just put the bit.ly URL in chat. Good. It looks like people are able to go to it. Okay, great. So this is how we will gather feedback today. I mean, we'll be discussing it, but we'll also give you an opportunity to just answer questions here. Anybody can type right here after each question at any time. We also have links to the slides, and there is a direct link to the draft companion document. So you can go directly to that and open that in a new tab. There, people are going to it. Great. So you have two documents right now. You can go back and forth between those two. So today's session is a joint effort between two committees. Well, I guess the first one is not a committee, but in the Anthropology and Sociology section, there are these two groups working together. So first we have the Criminal Justice Criminology Discussion Group, and Nancy Gibson and Scott Hertzberg are the co-conveners of that discussion group. And then we have members of the Instruction and Information Literacy Committee. I am a co-chair along with Catherine Bowers. And we also have members, well, I guess some of these people just rolled off because of the new academic year starting, or fiscal year. But Wayne Bevins Tatum, Jenny Bowers, Amira Bridger Wilson, Jessica Hagman, Thomas Weeks, and Jeff Willer have been on this group. But also there were committee members before us who started on this document too. I want to get an idea of who all's here today. So if you would, please go to Menti and type this code. I just have two questions. And it's just for us to get to know, like, who's in the audience today. Let me see. Let me leave that up for just a little bit more. You can get that QR code, or you can go to menti.com and enter 9294-4136. And the first question is just, what is your profession? We didn't know if it would be all librarians here, or perhaps a handful of professors.
Margie, it says waiting for presentation to start for me.
Oh, yeah.
Same here.
There we go. Surprise, surprise, we have some academic librarians on here today. Let's give it a little bit longer, or it could be we only have academic librarians on. We're 21. And you can see the results, right? Okay, I thought so.
Margie, can you, there was a request to post the code again?
Oh, yeah. Here's the code again, 9294-4136. Okay, now I see. There's one government librarian on here. Okay. And since we're talking about the framework for information literacy, I just want to know what your thoughts are on just the general ACRL framework for information literacy. What parts or what frames do you find easiest to use in your teaching? I thought this would be really interesting to know. You can pick more than one. Wow, scholarship as conversation. Oh, and research as inquiry. That's really interesting. I've never asked this question to a large group. If I was answering, which I can't juggle all that at once, but I would say authority is constructed and contextual is one that I find easier to use and talk about in my instruction. And probably scholarship is conversation. But this is really good to know, everybody. Looks like all the parts got at least one vote, but the first two only got one. Okay, well, cool. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so back to our slides. Our next speakers, I just wanted to introduce them before they, got underway. We have here we go. So Nancy Gibson is co-convener of the discussion group in ANSS for criminal justice, and is also the grants and special projects librarian at Austin, PA State University. Jessica Hagman and Catherine Bowers are on the information on the Instruction and Information Literacy Committee. And Jessica is the Social Sciences Research Librarian at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And Catherine is Reference Librarian and Coordinator of Library Instruction at Valdosta State University. And I'm going to let them take it away.
All right, and if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be good. So we thought we'd sort of introduce the framework and kind of a little bit of a conversation here. I'm going to be talking with both Jess and Catherine, who were part of the group that worked on the framework. So we've got a few questions that we thought we'd ask today to kind of give people a background here into how this came to be. So Jess and Catherine, what was the main purpose and goal in developing this framework for information literacy in criminology and criminal justice? And what need did you see it fulfilling for librarians and students in these fields?
I guess I can start. I unfortunately was not in the era when the document was started, which actually dates back to 2017, which was about the time several other companion documents were, I guess, initiated. And I think just broadly speaking, the 2017 was about a year or two after the framework was passed by ACRL. And so it really became, and a lot of the scholarly and professional conversation at the time was how to implement these frames, how to unpack them, how to apply them, because for example, authority takes different shapes in different disciplines. So across the disciplines, you can, if on the ACRL website, you can see that there's social work, there's sociology, journalism, all sorts of different disciplines have these companion documents. And as far as what needs is it fulfilling? I guess one of the things that I think we come back to is that this is for librarians across their careers, working with a range of different scholars, students, et cetera, to kind of communicate what sort of a comprehensive, holistic, and critical information literacy looks like.
And I would agree 100% with everything Catherine said. And also to just add that I think the companion documents in general, and this one in particular, are useful because so many of us come to subject librarianship without a wide background in the areas we study. So these are a way to support the work of librarians who are new to an area, or looking to revitalize their instruction, or if they're not deeply embedded in this discipline already, which I think is most of us, at least for one discipline that we're working with.
Thanks. Yeah, I can definitely echo that. I'm fairly new to criminal justice, so this was a great way to kind of get familiar with criminal justice. All right, next, there we go. So can you walk me through the collaborative process of how this framework was developed over time by the committee, and what were some of the key stages and iterations it went through?
I can go first this time, unless you want to, Catherine.
No, please.
So as Catherine mentioned already, this document has been in progress for a very long time. This committee began working on companion documents very shortly after the framework was released. The committee spent a while developing the Sociology companion document, which is excellent and highly recommend. And then after that was completed, or as it was getting towards the process of being accepted, we, as a committee, we decided we wanted to work on this document next. We are also working on an anthropology document as well. And I would say, so when we came to it, Catherine and I and the other more kind of current authors, there was some draft text, and I think we definitely did look at that and kind of drew what we could from that. And I think we spent a lot of time thinking about the structure of the document. I think particularly because the sociology document, if you haven't looked at it, but it is very differently structured than most of the previous other companion documents, because they really tie it into a disciplinary framework as well. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we wanted to do that. We did end up deciding to keep it frame by frame. We divided up the frames, and each person would draft some text to go with their with their frames. I think maybe we each had one or two. I think probably four of us in the kind of bulk of the draft development. And we would kind of put some text out there and then share with each other and give feedback. I would say one of the biggest things was trying to avoid duplication, because so many of these concepts are interconnected, obviously, and figuring out a way to be specific as well as represent that interaction. And then also, again, deciding on in addition to the structure, like what other additional materials might be needed, such as example assignments or things like that. So I think those are all things we would love to get feedback from you all as well, if there's additional types of information that would be valuable for this document if you were going to use it in your work.
And building on what Jess said, I did not join the process until late 2020 or early 2021. And this was, the draft had already been largely written, but because of the magic of metadata in Google Docs, we were able to kind of like trace like previous authors and some other discussion points. So we could sort of build on what some of the friction spots were. So some of the draft was really just, regular revising, just as you would with any document. But one of the other things, and I don't know if this is too early to mention it, but one of the things that we did look at, in addition to kind of sort of revising like what goes into how can we differentiate some of the knowledge practices between each frames. One of the things we did was I asked one of my colleagues here at Valdosta State, who is faculty in the Criminal Justice Department, to look at it and see if it made sense, to see if we were accurate or adequately, first of all, communicating different terms of art within the document, because, sometimes like, well, it makes sense to us, we know exactly what we're talking about, but being able to have sort of one or two external reviewers just kind of look at it and be like, yes, this, yes, we don't really deal with this, etc. The main feedback was that it looked really useful and interesting. Not necessarily something they would use, but they were able to unpack what the purpose of the document was for them. They could see why it made sense. And so that, to me, that was a key stage, because I hadn't come in, and also my particular position, I'm not dedicated only to criminal justice research. So it was very validating for, people who like affirmations and validation. So.
Great. I think that leads us really well into the next question. So were there any aspects of information literacy unique to criminal justice and criminology that were challenging to incorporate or articulate within the 6 frames?
Jess, do you want to take that?
Sure. I guess I can give my perspective, and if you want to share yours, I think it maybe have different answers. I would say for me, I think obviously we all know like power is always embedded in information discussions and information literacy, but it is so clearly part of any sort of conversation about criminology and criminal justice, particularly at this moment in time. And it's politicized, obviously always political, but kind of politicized in a kind of formal, politics kind of way as well. So I think for me, kind of trying to understand how this document should respond to those things, those kind of aspects of power relations, and that the idea of data, what does this data mean, and this data sort of, or information for criminology has such a or any sort of like criminal justice related data has such a strong impact in our understanding of the world right now that I think this is something we really want feedback on going forward, as well as to understand how to, kind of bring that critical voice into it, with also like, kind of addressing politics at large, or not addressing, navigating that kind of, being critical, but careful about how we talk about that in a way that is inclusive and things like that. So to me, that was probably the most difficult, and to think about this in terms of kind of current events, and which is also probably the most interesting thing, in a way that it is so clearly applicable to our life right now in a way that, at least for me anyway, some other disciplines aren't as so salient. So that would be mine. What would you say, Catherine?
I would agree with Jess, because I think every time we came together for a meeting, and by the way, we just kind of did it like through Google Meetup or Zoom or however, whoever was hosting. So it was just kind of like any kind of collaborative process. There's always something like, should we talk about things like commercial DNA and people using peripheral information about that? So to me, in addition to the social and cultural elements related to power structures, like at all levels, criminal justice and criminology to me seems very disparate in its data sources. Data is often irregularly collected, or the data collection is often non-standardized, and also, like, for example, I'm also on the IRB at my institution, and so whenever somebody is doing like a secondary data project, it's sort of like, well, does publicly available information mean publicly available if it's in a shoebox of index cards on a shelf, like that sort of thing. And so it's really kind of like being able to tie all these things together about access to data, the data collection process, and like being able to put this together in a way that really communicates communicates the librarian aspect, like access to information, how to put this together, and how to critically examine all the different parts. If crime definitions are different, and if population descriptors are different, and so on. And that of course also does tie into Jess's point about thinking critically about the questions that are being asked in the process of research. So
All right, great. Now this next question might be a little bit of a repeat. Margie, if you want to advance, there we go. We talked a little bit about this initially, but if there's anything else you want to add, and then we can talk about next steps. But how do you hope this framework will be used by librarians, and what impacts do you hope it will have on information literacy instruction in criminal justice and criminology? And then what are some of the next steps for it getting implemented, as we've talked about it being sort of midstream right now?
you go ahead, Jess.
Oh, okay. We probably should have picked an order before. I would just say I hope that someone who is new to criminal justice or criminology librarianship, or someone who is maybe taking a new track, or perhaps wanting to take a more critical approach or revitalize their information literacy instruction, would be able to look at this for some language, perhaps examples of activities that they might use, or to know that there are other people who are trying to kind of make this connection between information literacy and this the complexity of information around criminal justice and criminology, especially in the time that we're in, where I think these questions are more salient for more people, and they have become more so and are going to continue to be, so that librarians will have a sense of having other people, other ideas, that there is this movement to think about this more critically, and to draw on that as they do that work, because it will be challenging. I think it is particularly challenging given the political and kind of power relations involved there. And in terms of next steps, well, Catherine, why don't you say what you're thinking, then we can talk about next steps.
Sure thing. No, to be how I'm thinking about it in terms of my own relationship with my students and faculty, this has really helped me kind of think more about the types of assignments that come in to the library, and also like how to speak with we have a sort of a casual liaison model at my institution. So, but this gives me some things to connect with some of the faculty about, like, how do you talk about artificial intelligence in your classrooms, and also things like, because criminology and criminal justice, like, it's a little bit of sociology, it's a little bit of legal studies, it's a little bit of statistics, and so on. And so you have all of these things going on, and this is a way to kind of frame that. So it can help us relate to students. And one of the next steps really could be coming up with maybe and more, because this is really kind of underrepresented, except some of the more like hardcore sociology aspects in places like Project Cora and the ACRL Sandbox. There aren't a whole lot of criminal justice model assignments, and so this is one of the things that it could be really useful if somebody wanted to just sort of play with something other than just sort of break down what an empirical study means in criminology research when you're just using your discovery layer and how to filter out law reviews from statistical research and so on, and just really just kind of like being able to connect the parts that are relevant for the discipline, and you know, what faculty needs are and what student needs are, especially if they're just using libraries for the first time.
And in terms of next steps, so this is a draft that has been approved by the section ANSS. So the next steps are to formally gather feedback from outside of the section. So to you all, you all are part of that process. So we hope you'll share feedback with us today. And then we do also hope you will share with other librarians, and especially other folks that you work with in criminology or criminal justice, or who you think might be interested. And we will, I think we're open to like what that, and would appreciate suggestions on what format that might take, whether that's more discussions, sort of form, sharing copies that people can comment on. And I think the steps do require us to kind of keep track of what we do with that feedback. So there is some formalized documentation involved with that as well. And I think, I can't remember if the next, another question it gets, we have some topics that we're interested in getting particular feedback on. So we'll also ask you about that as well. And then there's a, once it's like a final draft, there's a, you know, multiple committees and whatnot before publication.
All right, thank you both very much. We're going to turn it over back to Margie, and I think everyone's going to have a chance to look at the draft framework here for a minute or two.
Yeah, yes, I'm back. Thank you for that conversation. I really loved hearing from both Catherine and Jessica. And that was great. Thank you. Let's see. Yes, let's get back to our session. Yeah, so I'm going to go back, and I gave you a link at the very beginning. I want to give you that link again. I'm going to put that in chat. This goes to a document that we're using for today. It goes to this document for discussion participants. And it has a direct link to the draft companion document. And you can open that in another window. And I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit so you can like scan it if you haven't had a chance to. Yeah.
I love the comments so far, so thank you.
Oh, I had only seen one comment.
Oh no, there's several, so.
Oh,
This is
good.
exciting.
Good. Okay. I put in that pause because I always feel a little rushed in a session where I'm trying to look at something, trying to pay attention. These are great comments. This is exactly what we hoped for with this. Any questions, comments, anything on this document would be great. We do have some like specific questions for today, so I'm switching back to the document for discussion participants. I also have these questions on slides, but I wanted you to know what we're hoping is that if you feel comfortable talking during today's session, we'd love that. Love for you to go to reactions and hit the raise hand if you want to talk. Or you can type, well, I'd love for you to do both if you talk live, and then put your answers in the comments in the space after each question. So we can do both. It would help us capture the feedback that you have. So for the instruction that you do or that you want to do, for me, it's that I want to do. I'm kind of new to criminal justice myself. I'm not new to social sciences, but I'm newer to criminal justice. So for the instruction that you do or want to do, what parts of the companion document do you see yourself using? And then a related question is just, is the companion document specific enough that you can apply it to your teaching? You can also, oh, I thought I made that document for discussion participants. Everybody could edit. I am going to change that real quick. All right. That should be changed now. I went in and made it anyone with the link can edit. I don't know if you have to like close it, go back to it, or if it'll just allow you to type in it.
You might have to refresh, but I didn't have to exit.
Okay. Oh, okay. Maybe refresh then. Oh, good. Okay. So I will get back to sharing. Here we go. So anybody, what parts do you think you would use or want to use or have already used? And is it specific enough? And I am just watching to see if there are raised hands or.
If we can give everyone a couple more minutes here again, just to kind of get their thoughts collected.
Yeah. We have to use it in teaching too. Give it that. I call it a 20-second wait after asking a question.
I always get dinged on that on peer reviews. Like, you didn't wait long enough, or you didn't let us answer. So I'm like, I'm just excited.
You know, we have some other questions too. You could respond to any of them. Let me go through them briefly. Another question is, what do you think is missing from the companion document? What suggestions, the committee kind of talked about what might be missing. We think that that data and statistical literacy could be worked in there. So anything about the social construction of data and statistics, or, earlier, Jess, I think, brought up information power and power relations. So anything along the lines of data and statistics and how they're created and used. Another question is, how might you apply the companion document to the evaluation of law, policy, legislation? And another thing we talked about is we wondered if it should have artificial intelligence in it somehow. And what suggestions then do you have for integrating AI? And then who should we ask for more feedback on the document? So you could respond to any of these questions. And it could also be like, maybe you haven't exactly used one of the frames, but you have like touched on these things in your instruction. And you could just go ahead and talk about it.
Margie, I see some comments appearing in the document. I wonder if it would be okay if I just
Yeah.
said some of those so we could.
I was just thinking about that.
Okay. There was in question 3 about what's missing, the idea of crime data and real time. I think that's obviously tied up with so many questions about how do we know what kind of crime is being committed and things like that. I wondered if anyone has any thoughts about that or has figured out a good way to deal with that. And also the variation, Catherine mentioned this earlier, the inconsistency in the way data is collected and reported. I think the classic example being the states that just don't have any hate crimes because they don't report that. Jeff, I think.
I think there's other questions too about like how if data is disaggregated in any way. I know sometimes some of the figures on Bureau of Justice Statistics, for example, will list things like the total number of people incarcerated for X crime and not really break it down by like age or gender or race or things like that, which I think can, you know, leave out part of the story.
That's a good question. I'm going to do a Control F to see if we have disaggregated anywhere in the document.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Oh, good. Some people are talking about what might be missing. I mean, another person, sample learning goals. Yeah. I think we have ideas, like real brief ideas about how to use it in a class, but yeah, thank you for that. Oh, like in the Pippers companion document. Oh, I see. We have examples of the frame in practice in the document. Okay, yeah, so learning goals. Oh, okay. So in chat, Emily Reed asked, how long do you anticipate collecting feedback on this document? They would like to spend some time reviewing, considering what suggestions. Yeah. And that was going to be one of the things I was going to say when I wrapped up is that we are leaving it open. We hadn't talked about how long, but I don't see us closing it anytime soon. And we would love for you to answer any of these questions even after today. Yeah. And Jess said, yeah, this is a kickoff to our feedback gathering process. Oh, and Emily says, love those examples of the frame in practice. Yeah. And then for the question 6 about integrating AI. Somebody has a question. Are we talking about the outputs of AI or the ethical considerations AI has for facial recognitions, etc.?
I can speak to that a little bit. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but this was one of the things where we definitely discussed it, and things like cities or communities where there's a high use of CCTV and other types of things, or scans and all sorts of facial recognition, because but I think we ultimately left it out of the document because, for first of all, expediency of like kind of like getting it done, but also it, like, once we kind of opened that up, it went into a whole other rabbit hole, but also it wasn't completely apart from anything else. Like there was no way to really delineate the, like, what we were trying to say with the information we had available in 2021, like when we were kind of like wrapping this up in 2022, because it was definitely there, but the large language models hadn't entirely launched themselves into the public imagination. So we wanted to kind of make this broad enough that it could get there. Like if you wanted to build that bridge yourself, you could do that. But if like the conversations we had, first of all, were basically limited by what was available at the time, and also like it would have been like a completely additional document. So Jess, is there anything you wanted to like more specifically add to that?
I think the public knowledge and expectation of public discussion about AI is so much more than when we were drafting this and getting it approved. It has taken us some time to get back to this after we got through that first part of getting the draft approved. So, and so much has changed, I think. And I think this has actually been going on for a long time. And there was, obviously, like, people have been using AI and all this sort of technology in ways that is potentially extremely harmful. And, there have been people talking about this, but it is so much more in the public consciousness now that I do think it is important that it is addressed in some fashion. But I think we certainly need feedback from folks who have more experience working with that. And I think maybe having conversations about AI more general and potential harms. And I think maybe I'm just repeating what you said.
No, I was thinking about that, because what you said was, if we were to put it somewhere, if we could only put it in one frame, where would it go? And I'm thinking information creation as a process, but I mean, there's all sorts of other reasons to put it in a few other places, because, and also, again, like this ties back to some of the questions where, like in particular, like some states just don't have hate crimes, or lack of disaggregated data, and just this is just kind of like the points of like, is how do we talk about surveillance in terms of or artificial intelligence in these terminologies? Is it like, and how is it defined? And the law hasn't caught up to ethical considerations, or vice versa. So anyway, so that is something we are definitely open to, and it's something that we're just dealing with like all over the place anyway. So let us know. So, but anyway, so if anybody has any particular frame that they want to like maybe put AI in it, or like maybe scatter it across a few, that would definitely be useful in illuminating conversation.
I saw that there was a comment about technology more general, and I think that's certainly true, that AI and predictive things like that are all kind of part of a bigger question of like who gets to collect data about people and crimes and all of that, and then who gets to interpret it, and what do we do when those interpretations are different, and people make appeals to technology of the supposed objectivity of technology and for collecting data and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of everywhere all at once.
I mean, we were talking about that just to let everybody into our writing circle. These were things that we were talking about. We were talking about like, well, like some, there isn't like a standard agreement on fingerprint accuracy. There's the whole like DNA, commercial DNA thing, the Law and Order effect, or whatever it's called, the criminal minds effect, whatever it is. And and then also when we were talking about I feel like half of my contributions to the group were like, there's this one podcast I heard about whatever. And it was very much, there was a predictive modeling about serial killers and so on. And of course, and then we have the other flip of the coin where a lot of students are really interested in kind of like or maybe it's just the students I work with, sort of, I don't want to say value neutral element of criminology, but it is kind of the stuff that's a little bit more has less of an actual real life impact when you're talking about things like community-wide issues and so on. So but just to kind of like bring all that in, we are having these questions, but again, it's kind of like, it felt like there was like a pin here and a pin there, and like, how do we kind of make this part of a larger critical framework that can be brought into a classroom and can be communicated with researchers who are, using or just like completely stymied by a lack of data in whatever they're working on. So yeah. So exactly. Everyone expects, thank you, CSI effect. Yeah. The DNA, like, and how do you, and of course, that's only like part of a criminology research discipline. A lot of it is recidivism, rehabilitation, prevention, like all of these things. And so like that's the other problem, is like we're focusing on this one particular area, and how do we also like bring in the other elements of like, how do we talk about restorative justice, or how do we talk about like all the other things that aren't like the flashier local news element of criminology research, and how do we kind of like bring all this in and have a holistic discussion. And of course, like then we're like, well, we're the librarians, we're not the faculty in this area, so how do we lead people to the data sources they need, and how do they look at these with sort of an open critical mindset of finding the answers to the questions, and also forming the questions and looking sort of into whatever it is they're interested in.
Thank you for all of that. I was looking under question 1, somebody's talking about an assignment that is used, and that they might use the searching as strategic exploration, a frame. Yeah, the identify multiple producers and sites of information. Yeah. I see somebody has made a comment about on the authority frame. You could apply it to the change of the Department of Justice focus website from presidential administration, from one administration to another. Yeah, especially if it switches parties. I've always wondered about that. Somebody says the document is specific enough that you can apply it to your teaching. Good, thank you. So, well, one thing I always think about these companion documents is it different enough from the regular framework to be useful? Like, is it criminal justice-y enough? Like that's one thing we really want to make sure. And it's the same with all the other documents too. Are they specific enough to use, but yet, general enough that they bring in the frames? Okay, great. It is criminal justice-y enough. Thank you. So these are great comments, questions in here. Thank you so much. I was just looking through them. I think on the last question 7, who should we ask for more feedback? A focus group of criminal justice faculty is a great idea. Please add any of your other ideas here. Yeah. And then there is a place for additional. Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, and also if you have criminal justice faculty who might be interested in reading this, I saw, please let us know who they are. So so we can, maybe send it in the right direction. So Margie, please continue.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a place for additional questions if yours did not fit anywhere. I hate to think that we would miss a question just because it didn't fit in one of those 1, 2, 3, 1 through 7. I want to tell you that at the end of this document, there are a few articles listed that we came across. The first one, the Hartzog, 2 AI Truths and a Lie. I read that. That's really informative. It talks about ethical use, and how we may be perpetuating things that are wrong, but it's written in a really readable way. It's more of an essay. But there's also a couple of really good articles just about the criminology curriculum and how you can relate it to information literacy. The Trappin article is a scoping review, actually. I'm really looking forward to reading that one. And we have some others listed. And you can add yours. You can add any to this. So let's wrap up. So for everybody who is not, for everybody who watches this recording later and is not here today, I want you to know that this document for discussion participants we're going to leave it open, maybe indefinitely, I don't know. But the URL is here, and we invite you to participate and add some feedback. The next steps, we talked about this a little bit, and so I'm not going to go through all of this, but there is a whole process that you go through for companion documents. And so I know that our committee, the Instruction and Information Literacy Committee, is going to do a lot more work with it. It has to go to ANTS leadership and then back to some ACRL committees. And then finally, after we get the ACRL board approval, that's when we can announce it and it'll be more official. And I don't know how long that'll take. We're going to make it go as fast as we can. And I want to again thank both of these committees members for all of the work on this, and those that have come before us who were on this committee. And Lois, I want to give you another shout out for setting this up today. We do have an evaluation of today's session. And I think here, I'll just put that into chat unless
I got it. Sorry, it took me a moment.
That's okay. That's okay. So Nancy put in the link for the evaluation today. And they actually do make a difference. We're actually going to look at the results. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it makes a difference, but please do. We look forward to your responses. And thank you, everybody. Is there anything else? Or we just want to make sure I wasn't.
Well, if anyone, Margie, has ideas for a future discussion, Nancy and I would really appreciate that. We're always looking for topics, and I guess we won't have another discussion until the fall or so.
Yeah.
You can think of anything. If not, we'll come up with something.
Thanks, Scott. That was a good reminder.
Yeah. And there's other discussion groups too for the different topics. Thank you, Scott. We approached the discussion group conveners, Nancy and Scott, about this, and but any ideas you have for any discussion groups would be great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.